For the fringe finish technique, you're going to need just a couple of extra tools. You'll need some sort of seam gauge or ruler, a pair of scissors, regular white sewing thread, Gutermann or something similar. Anything kind of basic works fine. And then you definitely do want a sharp needle, not a cross stitch needle. Let me see if you can see that. So a sharp needle makes it a little easier. Now, once you have those tools gathered, and also some pins and a pin cushion is helpful. Not absolutely necessary, but it's very helpful to have a few extra pins. Once you have your tools gathered and you have your embroidery finished, you're going to pull some thread channels as placement lines for your side fold. We're going to start by actually hemming the side, and then we'll fringe the ends. So to do that, what I've done, you can notice here, I have actually pulled the thread a 1/2 inch away from the embroidery and 1 inch away from the embroidery. And I've done that on both long sides. These are the sides that will just be hemmed. These sides will not be fringed. So to pull a thread, if that's a new technique to you, all you do is you find the thread, and here I measured the first one a 1/2 inch away like this. And then I measured the second one 1 inch away, and I took a needle and I pulled up that thread, and I'm just going to very carefully pull out that thread. I pull up a little bit of it, and then I gently ease it out like this, just pulling that thread out. The reason we pull a thread is it's the best way to get a really clean, crisp edge, because we're working with the threads of the fabric, and there's no chance that we're going to be off or be on the diagonal or anything like that. So we pull that thread like that, and now what we're going to do is we're going to trim along the outer pulled thread channel. Do not trim on this next one. This one's here as a fold reference. We're going to trim on this one. Now you can see that I have trimmed along my outside drawn thread hem channels. Now I'm going to go to the iron, and I'm going to actually press this in over the fold like that. And then I'm going to press it in this, tuck the little raw edge into it like that. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. For the side seams, I have pressed over the fabric along the very first thread channel, the drawn thread channel closest to the embroidery. So you can see that on this side, it's the one closest to the embroidery. And then I've taken this edge and just tucked it under and pressed it like that. Now, we're just preparing the side hems at this point. We are not going to hem them. We're going to do that as the last step. So what I'll do is I'll just put an extra pin right there and right here, just to sort of keep everything in place. And now we're going to move on to preparing the fringed ends. Once I have my side hems prepped, I am now going to take the embroidery and I'm going to turn it right side up so that the design is facing me. And I am going to measure down a 1/2 inch. So a 1/2 inch from the embroidery. And I am going to pull a thread there. I'm actually going to pull out 1 thread and then 2 more threads. So I'll do it this way. And again, I'm pulling out that thread like this. This is why we don't hem the side seams yet, because it would kind of get in our way. So we're just going to pull out that thread like this, and we're going to actually pull out 3 threads on each side of our embroidery. I've pulled out 3 threads a 1/2 inch away from the embroidery on either end, on both of the ends that I want to fringe my embroidery. Now, what I discovered when I started doing this technique is that there's a tendency for the corners to get a little bit bulky. So I think it's a good idea at this point to open this hem out like this, and what you're going to do is just take out this segment of the fabric. So you're going to cut like this just till you hit the drawn thread part, like that, and then you're going to cut over like this. That's just going to reduce a little bulk. Once you get to fringing, that end can be kind of bulky. So it's helpful to turn that under, but like it won't affect your side hem. So we'll do that on all 4 sides. I'm ready to start my drawn thread hem. I have my side hems pressed in place. I've cut out that extra little bit of bulk here on every corner. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sinking my needle in the side hem, because again, with even weave fabrics, you can't really make a knot. And I'm going to take a tiny little bar tack. That's just 2 little stitches side by side like this to start. Okay, like that. There's 1. Remember, don't pull tight on these until you get that 2nd stitch in. And then there's that 2nd stitch. Okay, great. Now, the first little bit I will tell you is just a smidge tricky, because here, when you're out here, it's super easy where the 3 bars are. When you're here, it's like, okay, wait, where are the bars? So you're going to basically look for 3 bars, and you're going to stick your needle through like this, pull it through, and then you are going to kind of from a almost like a little diagonal stitch, you're going to come up to the next area like this. And that's our first drawn thread stitch. Now, I will tell you at the little spot where the side hem is, it's going to be a smidge on the messy side. Don't worry too much about this. It's not going to end up looking messy when we're all done. But the first few little stitches on this technique are a little bit tricky. Well, not really tricky. They're just kind of bulky because we have a lot of threads we're dealing with here. And the reason we're working this drawn thread hem first is this drawn thread hem stitch is going to hold our threads in place while we work the fringe. This is what's going to allow us to remove threads. And so now here we are like that. And now I'm into just the normal easy part. And I'm going to pick up 3 bars like this. You'll notice that I am working from the wrong side of the fabric. Now here, you're just going to take a little tiny diagonal stitch like that and then pull through. This is why you want to use white sewing thread, is because otherwise it would be visible on the other side of the fabric. Now it will still be a little bit visible. Some people like working their drawn thread hem on the front. You can certainly do that. I kind of like the look of it, really kind of neat and tidy, working it from the back. That's just my preference, but feel free to play around with that because again, some people prefer working it from the front. And there I am working my drawn thread hem. And I'm going to just go ahead and do this all the way across the row, like that, pulling it into the little 3 bars. So I'm scooping up the 3 bars, pulling the thread through, and then I'm going in where the 3 bars, at the first of the 3 bars, and I'm coming out at the end of the 3 bars. So, and as soon as you do that, that's what pulls those in to 3 little bars and gives you that nice, tidy, drawn thread hem stitch. When I've finished that last stitch here, I'm going to end also with just 2 little bar tack stitches, and then I'm going to take my needle and sink it into the hem, making sure it isn't on the wrong side of the embroidery, about 1 inch, pull it out like that, and then I'll pull it slightly taut, and then I will trim it, and that will cause the tail end to sort of pop back into the hem. Now, I've done this on this end, and I've got all my drawn thread hem stitching done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the serged edge because it's honestly just going to make it difficult to work the hem. So I'm just going to get in here like this and just kind of trim it off. More or less evenly. I'm trying to kind of pick a thread and then just do that evenly. Trim that off like that. There you go. Okay, now the fun begins because here's where we get to start removing threads. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to use another needle and we're just going to start slowly removing threads. You're going to want to work 1 at a time. Don't try to do this too quickly and don't try to do it like in a group. You do have to kind of do it 1 at a time. And as soon as you, and as soon as you start doing that, you're going to see your fringe appear. Now, this is the basic fringe. Just working the drawn thread hem stitch here and removing the threads will give you just a basic fringe. You can do all sorts of neat effects though with the threads that are left. You can You can tie them into little knots. You can add little tiny tassels on the end, and you can even tie in beads. You can just do all sorts of fun things with this. I've finished removing all of the threads up to my drawn thread hem, and now you can see the importance of that drawn thread hem stitch because it's keeping your fabric from fraying any further beyond the fringe. Now at this point, you can leave the fringe as is. On a smaller piece like this little table runner, I absolutely would leave probably just a simple little fringe like this. It's really classic, really nice looking. This fringe for this, you're going to want a 1.5 to 2 inch hem allowance or finishing allowance really. But if you want to work more complicated fringe techniques like this one, like the Kolimbari diamonds, you're just going to leave a little bit more extra room to work. I would say leave yourself 3 inches. And then what you can do is you can take 2 groups of the little drawn thread hem knots, the little sections, and you can knot those together and turn them into little tassels like this. And you can do that either with your fingers or a crochet hook. I've tried both, and it kind of just depends on what your preference is. And this is a very classic finishing for Greek folk embroideries, especially. You can also work in extra, if you have extra DMC floss, you can tie in bits of DMC floss in between and add that in. You can make little itty bitty tassels and knot them to the end of these larger kind of tassels. You can do a braided macrame effect. Really, you can have a lot of fun with this. You can leave it very sort of classic and simple like this one, or like this one, very classic and simple. Or you can start getting really creative with the fringe. But either way, it's a fantastic fringe, a fantastic finish for your embroidery. Now, once I have that fringe all worked, then I will go back simply and I will just whip stitch my side seams in place. There is also a how-to video on how to use a whip stitch, but basically I will just take and stitch that little hem. You can even secure it to the stitches. If you have a row of stitches, you can run your hem thread through the stitches, and that way it will be completely invisible on the front side, which is nice. And there you have it, a beautiful fringe finish for your next project.